Hey, thanks for joining me for another video. So in this video, I just want to talk to you again about some things I've noticed about consciousness, okay? Specifically samskaras, but also what I've noticed, some really odd things that have happened recently, just in my awareness, like things that overlapping basically that I've noticed in terms of, okay, and I'll get to that in a minute. So the first thing I want to talk about is samskaras. For those of you who don't know, so samskaras are basically thought forms, okay? What also called thought forms. Samskara is a Buddhist term. Basically, it is they are karmas. Karma is the result of anything to do with action, okay? And from the moment we're born, to be honest with you, from the moment we're conceived, or the moment the soul, even arguably, possibly before, before the soul enters the body, even, it could be that karmas are accrued, because there would be karmas existing already in the womb or the body of the parents. And there is an element of absorption that probably takes place and I want to talk about this another time, but I did a bit of digging around about that yesterday, just because I'm really interested in the roots of trauma and all life paths and all these things. And I found again that looking at samskaras, looking at consciousness, looking at energy, looking at ways our field is imprinted, all these are the genetic, all the combination of those things is really, I think could be very useful in that sense. Anyway, so samskaras, so basically from the moment, I think probably from the moment that we're conceived till obviously till the day we leave this planet, I think we gather samskaras in our consciousness. So samskaras are basically, like I said, anything to do with doing, the act of doing, okay? And how it happens is our consciousness becomes imprinted with samskaras. Now, I'm in a very interesting space really at the moment, because I've been, I do a lot of meditating, I do a lot of observing of my thoughts, and in that sense, and because I also have short-term memory issues as well, I tend to find myself with how can I say it, with a blank very often. But the moment I start doing anything, speaking, walking, eating, driving, talking, I start feeling like I'm gathering samskaras again, okay? So I've noticed, because I've had, like I said, cleared out, or because of a combination of factors, the ones I've just sort of shared with you, I've sort of got to I'm in a space where, like I said, consciously, in consciousness, where I notice things that are sort of transiting quite readily, because of the fact that, like I said, because of this combination of influences and factors in my life. So I'm just sharing this, like I said, because I think it could be useful, maybe in the future to other people. I think certainly just noticing how thought operates, how it sort of accrues, and and how it can sort of influence your perceptions and your experience of life. So so I'm in that space at the moment. So the minute I start moving, the minute I start experiencing, the minute I come out of that trance or meditation, I start finding myself, I come out of observer mode. So basically, when I'm in that space, I observe everything that comes in. Again, this has all been out of necessity, but I have been on a pretty epic spiritual awakening in that sense. But again, I have to do this as well. It's compulsive for me. It's a matter of necessity as well. I'm not doing it, for the sake of enlightenment in itself. It's not even that. I'm just, it's really more driven by, again, this isn't about me or my story, so I don't want to make it about me either, okay? But I just want to say, just as we give it some context, like I said, really it's out of necessity, and also just refusing to give in to, and to backpedal, and to lose what I gained in terms of like changes and all these other things, but also to keep me on purpose as well, so I can keep going and keep sharing and keep like trying to, you know, I can stick to the vision, you know, that I have. Okay. Anyway, so samskaras. So the minute I start moving around, I start picking up on, gathering samskaras again. Okay. And so imagine, if you will, like that first. So you come out of a meditation. You've got a pretty clear mind again, and you're pretty happy. You know, whatever it is. Okay. And then you start perceiving again. So you might open your eyes. You might start engaging with the room around you again. And then you start actively thinking and perceiving. Now, that forms one layer. Call it like a base layer, okay? So, if you don't notice what you're thinking, your thoughts, as you're doing that, what will happen? I'm trying to think of a good example for you. What will happen is that if you don't notice those thoughts that you've gathered, okay, the samskaras, what will happen is that they will form a base, a foundation, okay, and they will feed into the next experience you have. They will echo in your subconscious mind, or very deep in your conscious mind at least. And I've noticed this, okay? I've literally heard this, okay? Where, you know, the top layer thought has disappeared, like being pushed to one side. And then what's underneath it, like the root, is something which I experienced like 10 minutes ago. I might have had a negative thought. I might have thought something really, like, I don't know, something might have come into my awareness that was negative, or like whatever it was. And that might have sat there as a foundation for the next experience, so to speak, okay? Or if not in the next experience, then it would be in an experience which resembles the one that you just had. That is the same as the one that formed that samskara. Okay, so that samskara echoes, it plays in the back of your mind, or it plays deep in your conscious mind, or, you know, forgive me, you know, I'm not, you know, but it plays, it echoes, it's like it formed, like I said, it's a base layer, okay? And then on top of that, you have like a conscious thought you might have, but there are layers of thought that are like, you know, bricks in a wall, okay, so to speak, psychic bricks or whatever. And then it's like I said, what seems to happen is, like you said, you have a top layer thought, okay, top layer. This isn't for all instances of samskaras, okay? This isn't for all instances with regards to samskaras, because samskaras can also be, like I said, first impressions of things tend to be like samskaras, in a sense that we draw on pre-existing experiences and thoughts we've had that to you know, that match that experience that we're currently having, and we draw upon those in that moment, okay? Which is kind of what I'm saying anyway. But you have a top layer thought, okay? Top layer thought, and then that thought might be incongruous. So for me, I have a lot of experiences. I notice this really clearly now, okay, because I have to stay super aware, okay, because of what's happened to me. And so it's something if I come on meditation, like I said, and then I start noticing, and don't get me wrong, I also have ESP experiences, so this can be other people. I've got to be super careful about that, absorbing other people's information and things like that, okay? You know, in other people's emotions and thoughts, okay? So that's the other thing. But what I would also say is that, like, I've noticed very clearly moments where I'm thinking, why am I so stuck with this? Like, why? like say 20 minutes later, I'll be thinking about, like, why am I so stuck? Why can't I get out of this? Like, like maybe I'll have like hit a bit of a wall, or have like a negative like thought pattern emerge, or something, or like I can't shake an experience. I can't break, like, maybe an intrusive thought, or whatever it is, and almost, well, not almost, like 10 times out of 10, okay, there's the reason for that is because of an underlying thought that I couldn't immediately perceive, which is a samskara, okay, or it is to do with the influence, the connection to other people influencing my conscious experience. So therefore I'm having thoughts that echo their, that mirror their state of mind as well, okay. But the samskara thing, but again, I would say more often than not, and I think more relevant to like most people out there would be that that samskaras, that if you're stuck in a negative thought loop, there's almost certainly going to be like a root foundational thought that could be in your field that is basically like informing that top layer thought that you're having, that you can't budge, okay. So there's almost always going to be, like I said, like that root samskara that's going to be affecting your conscious experience, okay. Like if there's something you're struggling with, there's going to be something underlying it that's causing that issue. It's almost like, I tell you what, a good way of sort of looking at it, I thought about this a few times, is if a bit like a helter-skelter, and like if you go start at the top of the helter-skelter, forgive me, and you go around the helter-skelter and you collect, and as you're going around the helter-skelter, you collect samskaras, okay, and the further down you go, the more samskaras you collect, and the big gets bigger and bigger, your collection of samskaras. Or maybe it's better to say, take example, one samskara, okay. So say you start at the top of the helter skelter and you have one samskara, one tiny samskara, okay, and then as you go through the day, let's just take that for an example, one samskara formed in the morning, okay, and then you go around the helter skelter, and each time you go round, okay, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, because you gather more experience. The more you go around, the more again, the more time passes and you haven't noticed that samskara, the more experience you build on top of that samskara, the more embedded it becomes in your field, and it forms a pattern, and it informs your emotions, it informs your thinking, it informs your experience, okay. So this is something that I feel really passionate about sharing with people. I feel really, really passionate about, sharing with people what I've noticed about thought. And because I believe that, looking at samskaras as being, and other influences as well, okay, because thought, I mean, it's been lots of spiritual teachers and, have spoken about over the centuries and millennia how thought is basically like one of the big, how thought is like an illusion, like, or it's just, or not illusion, how thought, like, we're not our thoughts, how it traps us as well. Thought contributes to Maya, and that's very much true, but it also shapes a lot of the lovely things in our experience as well. And that's the paradox. I've spoken about this before. This isn't for everyone, maybe. I do, like I said, everybody's life is beautiful, and if it can help people, I believe there's a lot of potential there to help people, perhaps identify thought, like I said, troubling thought patterns in a deep, really fundamental way, which could alter their behaviors and mindset and emotion, and really change their lives. I believe that. I believe in the potential of this. I really do. It's not anything new. Like I said, Buddhists have spoken about samskaras, other people have spoken about thought forms, It's not a new concept, okay, but I feel like, again, I've had to become really, really like acquainted with it. But again, there's lots of people have spoken about this in different ways, but this has really been, like I said, in terms, I guess from my point of view, again, very much informed by like trauma, like again, the traumatic experiences and challenges I faced. Again, many people have had those, but it's been a very intense experience. The bottom line is, like I said, that there are ways that we can, there are ways that we can, there is potential to develop like new therapies, I think, or new ways of assisting people with, especially who have intrusive thoughts, or depression or anxieties, or maybe PTSD type symptoms, or compulsive behaviors, or certain things, behavioral issues, emotional issues, to see what the root of that could be, addictions, to again really sort of, again, and meditation is a huge part of that, but like learning to observe your thought and disidentifying from your thoughts, observing them and seeing what comes up, and realizing how it snags you, how it can trick you. And again, as you go around that helter-skelter, like I said, one thought basically can become a thought pattern, become part of like a bigger, how can I say it, can become part of a pattern which governs your life, or can get larger, can become more, can become really embedded, to the extent that, like I said, it forms new behaviors. It dictates your emotional state for some time, perhaps, if it's not readily identified. So that's why it's really good. I mean, I sit here a lot and just try and catch samskaras, like with a net, basically. Again, out of necessity, okay? I'm not saying that, like, because they're beautiful. Again, samskaras are also very informative. They can teach us a lot about life, about things that we could know, that are interesting to know, things that we might want to look at, all that sort of thing. They can teach us about a lot, okay? They can teach us many, many things about who we are, our experiences, things that matter, matter to us, our compulsions. They don't not matter, okay? They matter, okay? I'm not saying that they're useless information, or they're, and don't get me wrong, a lot of them are based on lies, okay, so to speak, about who we are, okay? But there's also a lot of beauty in them as well. I guess the bottom line is, like I said, that there is a lot of potential to help change, like a lot of potential to try, to help change people, to help people break out of thought patterns, like I said, that are destructive, and maybe change, lives along the way. Again, it's a deep dive, but it's worth it. And I think that this is something that can be, and I'm thinking about this at the moment. This is something like that could be, I think, sort of like, how can I say it, turned into potentially like there could be like therapeutic models that are developed on this, meditation based, like a mixture of meditation, CBT, like, but the meditation, CBT, and like self inquiry, that sort of thing, like a meld of those things, like really, again, encouraging people to go, like, again, perhaps in the future, go on like a consciousness, using consciousness insight as a foundation for these things, as opposed to, looking, which, don't get me wrong, like I said, the human brain is important in this as well, okay? I'm not saying it's not important, but I really think the consciousness, like, I think looking at consciousness and thought, and again, how tricky and sticky it is, and how it can snag you and snare you, because it really can. It's a trickster, okay? If you're not careful, like I said, it will get you onto, it will take you to places that you don't want to go, okay? So you've got to be really careful, okay? So again, I'm a bit of a, like, I'm a bit of a, I've got I just want to share with people what I think could be really helpful. It's helped me enormously, okay? It's helped me enormously, all right? So what was the other thing I was going to say about consciousness? So that's some